God bless the first responders that had to appear on scene at the Clancy house on the day of the incident. Day 3 of Lindsay Clancy's trial wrapped up on Thursday. It's a great day for a great day. My name is Sydney Rushing. I'm a criminal defense attorney in the state of Michigan. Now let's talk about it. First things first, the morning started off with the judge talking about scheduling, and we know that on Friday they were going to go do their live view of a few different locations plus the Clancy household. Then witness number 4, Stephen Hall, was called to the stand, and he is a Duxbury police officer who was working the night of the incident. He described that when he showed up to the scene where he found Lindsay and which direction her body was laying, he said that the wounds that she had on her neck and her wrist were not actively bleeding, and she was kind of going in and out of consciousness. He kind of described this as she would wake up, move around a little bit, and then go back still again. And then, as you can imagine, he was very emotional when he was being shown the pictures of the basement and describing where he found the children. He said he was called to be outside with Lindsay Clancy, and when he saw the second story window, he saw blood on it. And he basically was asking the paramedics what he could do to help, and they kept saying that she was taking her oxygen mask off and that he had to keep putting it on. The defense had no cross-examination for this witness, just thanked him for his service. Then witness number 5, Brian Josephine, took the stand, and he's also a Duxbury police officer. He also responded the night of the incident, and he's actually a school resource officer, but he was working overtime. He described that when he arrived, he saw Lindsay Clancy on the ground and saw Patrick Clancy standing over her. Now, Officer Josephine described Patrick Clancy like walking by him abruptly, and then when he went and saw Lindsay Clancy, he said that she did have wounds on her neck and her wrist that were bleeding, but not profusely bleeding, and that he didn't feel any of her injuries were life-threatening at the time. He then said that he and Officer Hall heard screaming, so they went into the house and proceeded to the basement where they were hearing the screaming. And that is where they saw Patrick Clancy coming out of a room where his son was unalived. And then also that's where they found the other children, and Patrick Clancy was yelling, "She unalived the fucking kids." Then Officer Josephine said he went into the room. He saw Dawson. He knew it wasn't going to be good. He took Dawson upstairs to the paramedics, came back down, and then he found the other 2 children. The defense had no cross-examination for Officer Josephine, so he is done and excused. Witness number 6 was Duxbury Fire Captain PJ Husey, which at first the defense objected, stating, "I'm renewing my objection." Basically, he's trying to say how repetitive the witnesses are and how, they're basically all saying the same thing, and it's kind of just to use to pull on the jury's emotion. But after a brief sidebar, the judge ruled that he could testify, so he was called as witness number 6 after a brief break. He said on the day of the incident, he was working his 24-hour shift, and he was acting as the shift commander. He responded to the Clancy home with a fire truck and an ambulance. He said when he arrived, there was already some officers there. They then went and found Clancy in the backyard where paramedics were tending to her, and he supervised them. He then said he heard screaming from the basement, to where he looked through a basement window and saw Patrick Clancy taking something off the head of one of the children. And again, the defense had no cross-examinations for this witness, so he was excused. Witness number 7 was Chuck Nudd, who is a retired Duxbury firefighter and EMT. He was also working his 24-hour shift the night of the incident at the Duxbury Fire Department. He said he responded to the Clancy home around 6 p.m. on the night of the incident in an ambulance. He said when he was dispatched that he was not aware that there were any children involved. He also testified that while there were other people already on the scene, that they were the first fire personnel to arrive on scene. As he was walking towards the home, he saw another personnel bringing a child, and he called them over to the stretcher. He said the child was blue in nature, had marks around his neck, and that he was pale. This child was Dawson. He then said he was directed to bring his equipment inside to the basement because there were other people working on 2 children. He then went back outside and was asked to drive the ambulance to the hospital. He drove the ambulance that had Dawson inside to the hospital. And sticking true to theme, the defense had no cross-examinations for this witness. Witness number 8 was then called to the stand, Keith Nettie, and he is the fire chief. He was off duty the day of the incident. However, they heard the page for any off-duty firefighters able to come in to a report, so he did. He said he arrived in his own personal vehicle. When he arrived, he saw a bunch of people on scene. He went to the back of the ambulance and helped treat Dawson. He said at that time, Dawson did not have a heartbeat. He described the marks that he saw on Dawson, and he said that on the trip from the incident location to the hospital, that they were never able to regain a heartbeat. He said while he was at the hospital, he saw another child arrive from that home, and he went out and assisted in giving chest compressions as they brought the child out of the ambulance. He said he recalled seeing Patrick Clancy at the hospital that night. He described Patrick Clancy as being visually upset. He got him a chair at one point in case he needed to sit down, and then he was thanked and excused from the stand. Again, the defense had no cross-examination questions for this witness. Witness number 9 was called to the stand, and this was Patrick Dwyer. Now, he is a firefighter and a paramedic for the Duxbury Fire Department. He also was working a 24-hour shift that day, and he arrived to the scene in one of the fire engines. He said when he arrived, there was already a lot of fire personnel and police personnel there. They went to the back towards Lindsay Clancy, but then they were directed towards the basement. He said when they arrived in the basement, they saw the 2 children on the ground and Patrick Clancy sitting on a couch by the children. Then they approached the children and they started CPR because the children were in cardiac arrest. He personally started doing CPR on Cora while his partner started doing CPR on Callan. He said that Cora did not have a heartbeat and that she was not breathing and that she did have some blood on her mouth. He said that Cora was then rushed to the hospital and they attempted to revive her but were not able to do so on their way. And again, he was thanked and excused with no cross-examination. Witness number 10, Jennifer Stratton was called to the stand. She was also working for the fire department on that day and was working with the fire engine. She said they pulled up to the address, that they saw their ambulance crew who was then walking towards the back of the house. She said she saw a firefighter kneeling next to Lindsay Clancy and then they heard shouting they should go to the basement. When she got down to the basement, she saw Cora and Callan laying face up on the floor. She immediately called for 2 more ambulances and she began doing CPR on Callan while her partner started doing CPR on Cora. She said that Callan had deep marks on him. She then carried Callan to the ambulance and was with him the entire ride to the hospital. She had no cross-examination from the defense and she was excused from the stand. And before the next witness was called, there was another request for a sidebar because again, the defense is saying you're calling all these people who are saying the same thing over and over and over. But again, these are although very much the same, they are all slightly different because they all slightly did different things. Witness number 11, Pembroke firefighter and EMT, Robert Costanza was called to the stand. He was working a 24-hour shift with his department and they responded to the scene as a mutual aid request. He said when he arrived, he saw Lindsay Clancy on the ground being attended by paramedics. She had a collar on her neck, she was secured to the backboard, and that her wrists were bandaged and that he saw no active bleeding. He also described superficial lacerations on her neck. He applied Narcan to Lindsay Clancy in the ambulance, but she did not wake up. On cross, he was asked a little bit about the Narcan situation, and he said that afterwards, Lindsay became a little bit more active. And he said at the time, he did not know that she had a spinal injury. And Costanzo also agreed that it was dark outside. He said he was there about 7 minutes, and the scene was chaotic. And then he was done testifying. Witness number 12, Duxbury firefighter and paramedic Daniel Doherty was called to the stand. He was treating Lindsay Clancy, and then he heard a scream. He said he, Captain Hussey, and firefighter Heath were trying to figure out what was going on. He continued treating Clancy and helped load her onto the backboard. Once the ambulance with Lindsay Clancy in it left, he went to the other ambulance to help with Dawson, and he rode in that ambulance to the hospital. On cross-examination, he was asked about his training, and he asked about the temperature outside. He said it was about 30 degrees, and he asked if he knew how long Lindsay Clancy had been laying there. And he responded he didn't know. He was asked if she might be suffering from hyperthermia, which may affect her blood flow, and then he was released from the stand. Witness number 13 was police officer Vincent Cahill with the Duxbury Police Department. He heard the call. He arrived on scene. He already saw that there was kind of chaotic and a lot of people there. He heard screaming, so he went to the basement. He saw Cora. He checked her pulse. She didn't have one. He stepped away as the firefighters came down. He accidentally bumped into Callan, checked him. He did not have a pulse, and he helped with rescue breaths with Cora, and that they never got a pulse back. Then he was assigned to watching the scene for the rest of the evening. Then the judge let the jury go for the day because of how long it was already. Thank you for being here. Thank you for following along, and make sure to check back for day 4 recap.